What's up everyone? It's matchup chart season. I just came back from a major tournament known as Patchwork where I placed 33rd with all villager. Thought I'd give a quick update on my thoughts because it's been a pretty long time since I made a matchup chart and a couple people have asked for it, so just gonna go over my thoughts on every matchup in some amount of depth, so let's just get into it. Just go alphabetical. We'll start with Banjo. Banjo is an unfortunate one. Pocketing Grenade is obviously super useful because it basically invalidates it for a whole stock. But honestly, a bigger deal is Lloyd just completely blocking Breagle Blaster. That's where he gets a lot of his main combo starters. That's where he gets a lot of his big neutral openings. So Lloyd doing that is pretty big. It's not all hopeless for Banjo. I mean, his side B is a great move to call out like bad Lloyds. He has really good disjoints and like down tilt and stuff. So it's not impossible for him, but it is pretty difficult. I would definitely give that one to Villager. Next up we got Bayo. Bayo is one of the harder matchups for sure. Witch Time being so good against projectiles is a little bit difficult to deal with sometimes. It basically makes Lloyd like a non-factor in this matchup, but we do have pretty good tools against her. Our out of shield game being good goes a long way against Bayo, and we also are probably one of the better characters at edgeguarding her out of anyone in the game. Can't think of any character that can edgeguard Bayonetta as consistently as Villager does with Bowling Ball, and even things like Down Air that just beat out Witch Twist sometimes. It's not too bad. You gotta play very defensive, and it really tests like your ability to play Villager matchups in a very non-standard way, which is a common trend in a lot of the worst matchups, is just being able to play a lot differently than the traditional Villager game plan. Next up we got Bowser. Bowser is not the worst matchup ever for him. He is heavy, he's big, he gets hit by a rising slingshot on the ground. He gets edgeguarded pretty bad. I did play a really great villager named Sakana at Patchwork who had amazing recoveries, so it's not all hopeless for Bowser off stage. He can do a lot of recovery mix-ups with his horizontal speed, and you have a lot more control than you might think. But he still dies really early to Bowling Ball off stage, and that can really be a problem because Bowser is a character that gets a lot off of living a long time. Obviously, he's super heavy, so being able to take even one early stock against him can really go a long way. Overall, his approach angles are pretty limited, and it's something you can take advantage of with Lloyd and with your anti-airs like up tilt, up smash, nair, things like that. Bowser Jr. is a pretty good matchup as well. A lot of his neutral revolves around the clown cart, and Lloyd and Slingshot being such dominant horizontal tools just really make that a pretty weak option for Junior. Again, it's not terrible, it's only slight winning. He has great tools. His forward air being really disjointed and spammable is pretty tough to deal with as Villager. He just goes through Slingshot, goes over Lloyd. He has decent edge guarding, and he's got really good damage output, so it's not the worst thing ever, but he really does struggle to get hits in neutral, and he also is pretty prone to edge guards, more so than other characters. Next up we got byleth. Byleth, I'm honestly going to put in the I don't know tier. I'll just be honest, I've never really played a good byleth. The last byleth I played was in 2022, a player known as Kip, who I don't even think plays byleth anymore. I'll say it, I don't know. I think if your matchup chart doesn't have an I don't know tier, you're lying, because there's so many characters, man. I just don't buy it. If I had to guess, I would say it's probably close to even. I mean, he's pretty slow, but he does have a sword. He gets edge guarded. I don't know, same old stuff. Not anything super informed, however, so I'll leave it in the I don't know tier for now. Captain Falcon, I'll put it at even. I was kind of debating putting it in the winning tier, but I think it's better to be left as even. I've played Sean more than I've played anyone else in tournament, so I know this matchup pretty well, and it's a tricky one for sure. Falcon, being one of the fastest characters in the game, has great tools to mess you up for taking too long to set up your projectiles like Lloyd and Slingshot. Because Villager's so floaty, even doing something like a jump landing Slingshot can just be taken advantage of by things like Raptor Boost. So Falcon does have not the worst time ever getting in. You have to play really defensively, and you have to really earn your projectiles in neutral if you're trying to beat Falcon. And the other thing is having your edge guards super on point, because Falcon honestly has crazy amounts of drift. So if you're not able to call that out when you see it, when they're doing drift mix-ups to avoid your bowling ball, it will be really hard to kill Falcon. He can be so evasive sometimes. But I think it's a pretty back and forth matchup. I'll leave it at even for now. It can be hard for Falcon to get in if you are good at stuffing out his approaches and not being too careless with your projectiles. Falcon obviously does a lot of damage, so it's not the easiest game plan in the world to execute. But yeah, I'd call it even for now. Chrom is definitely one of the harder matchups. I used to think it was Villager's worst matchup, actually. I've kind of gone a bit easier on it since then. Obviously, everyone knows Chrom gets edge guarded. That's not a Villager specific thing. But the one thing that makes Chrom really bad for Villager, and I would argue even worse than Roy, is that his ledge trapping is just so much better. His jab not having a sour spot just makes it so difficult for Villager to weave around his way off the ledge. You're really threading the needle when you get off ledge as Villager, and so against a character like Roy, where he has a bunch of sour spots, that can be not too bad. But Chrom can just press jab, and it's just a nightmare to get off. I mean, jab even hits Villager's ledge hang, which is really annoying to deal with. With Roy, you can just hang on ledge, you don't have to worry about anything, but Chrom, he can just kill you with jab back air, jab forward smash. It's just really hard. He's fast, he's hard to, get off your shield. He can mash on you, he can get in on you with his sword, but he also just dies. So, typical Chrom matchup, nothing too crazy there. Cloud is a similar story. Cloud obviously has a way better recovery than Chrom, and he's way more oppressive on stage with his back air and forward air just basically being completely safe. You have to have your parry game really on point against Cloud, and even then it's not free. I mean, back air can't even be punished on parry. Forward air you can, so you have to play very parry based and very mobile. You can't let him be hitting your shield a lot. Villager in a lot of matchups likes to play in his shield because nair to shield is such a good option, but against Cloud, it's really not advised. And of course, having your edgeguard flowchart is like absolutely imperative to be able to beat Cloud consistently. This is, I would argue, maybe approaching this tier. I don't have numbers on these, but I would consider Cloud like close to being like a -2. A lot of his neutral revolves around landing aerials, and because of that, he's a character that jumps a lot, and so Villager can take advantage of that. Sniping one jump can be a really crucial opening for Villager. You have to really be prepared to call out his aggression when you see it, calling out his run-ins, calling out his jumps, and really make the most out of every opening. Corrin, I'm not honestly too sure. I don't have the most experience against Corrin. I mean, I've played it a good amount. I played Shattuck years ago, but this is definitely, like, by every metric, just, like, not a good matchup. I mean, Corrin is super oppressive, probably one of, if not the best juggling in the game, and Villager does have a pretty hard time landing. Also has crazy ledge trapping, crazy disjoints, good edge guarding, good 2 frames, and Corrin does have a weirdly susceptible recovery, more than you might think. You get naired or down aired or bowling balled fairly easily. Kept, the Villager from Japan, has been a lot of great Corrins over there, including Neo and Lai. So I don't think it's the worst matchup ever. It's definitely winnable at top level, clearly, because it's been done, but obviously not a good matchup by any means. Next up we got Dark Pit. Dark Pit is also not a great matchup. It's not as bad as the other 4 probably, maybe are on the same level as Bayo, but the one thing that makes Dark Pit really annoying is a down B. It is almost impossible to punish. You have to hard read it, and you can't even just hard read it. You have to read it and then read what they do after that, because it just has almost no end lag. But besides that, his tools aren't exceptionally great against Villager. His airspeed is really bad, which makes his approaches a little more telegraphed. He can only really run in at you on the ground and with like short hop aerials. So you don't have as many approach angles to worry about, and he does have a very linear recovery that can be easily taken advantage of. But he is fast, he's got disjoints, and of course he's got the down B that you just can't mess with at all. So I would definitely put it in the harder tier. He also has good edge guarding against Villager. That's another thing that makes it tricky. Diddy, I'll put in even. I've played this matchup so much. This is probably my most played matchup, and you've probably heard that Villager does pretty well. You pocket banana, you edge guard, and those things are all true. But Diddy is a really great character. He completely runs circles around Villager in terms of mobility and in terms of damage output. He just gets so much damage off every hit, where Villager really struggles in that department. So he's really mobile. He can deal with Lloyd in a lot of different ways, like monkey flip kick, or going over it with a nair, or hitting it with forward tilt. So he has a lot of tools around Lloyd, but at the end of the day, his most oppressive game plan comes from Banana, and that stuff can kind of be nullified a little bit, not just from Pocket, but also from Lloyd. It literally just hits the Lloyd and then disappears or bounces. So Lloyd is really good to set up, but of course Diddy is fast enough to be able to punish it. And yeah, you do get edge guarded a little bit as Diddy, but it's not really that common. There's so many ways to mix up your recovery as Diddy Kong, so you shouldn't really be getting edge guarded that much. But yeah, it's definitely tough for him. He doesn't have good airspeed similar to Dark Pit. He has to come at you either from directly above or on the ground. So that's one thing that makes it a little tough for him to get anything started against Villager. But once he does, it can be kind of a nightmare. DK, I'm going to put in even. It's definitely way harder than Bowser because just of the sheer amount of hitboxes that this guy has. Down tilt, forward tilt, back air, even down B, all really great punishes on Lloyd, and it feels like his advantage state is a lot more explosive than Bowser's. Bowser just kind of gets big hits, his nair does a lot, his back air does a lot, But DK, it feels like he hits you and then he keeps hitting you. You know, he's got actual edge guarding. He's got a really good burst option and dash attack, something that Bowser doesn't have. He has a more susceptible recovery than Bowser, I would say. Because it's so slow, it's more prone to getting down aired and stuff. I honestly think this is a matchup that could be losing for Villager over time, but for now I'll just leave it there. Dr. Mario, I mean, it's basically what you'd expect. He's slow, he gets edge guarded, he loses. Kind of that simple. You know, it's not super free. Obviously you have Cape, you have Nair. It's basically exactly what you would expect. There's not really any crazy things to write home about in that one. Sorry, Dr. Mario. Duck Hunt, I'm going to put in the winning tier. I love this matchup. I spent a good few days labbing it out, and since then I've been a huge fan of it. I've played Fawn, I've played Big Duck Hunt Fan. Pocket is obviously a very valuable tool in this matchup, not just offensively, but mostly defensively. You know, you can punish Clay Pigeon with Pocket really easily. You can nullify the gunman shots, which can kill Duck Hunt at like 70 or 80% sometimes. Pocketing the can get you out of a lot of tricky situations. And of course, Duck Hunt can punish Pocket and bait it out, but you can also bait out the fact that they want to punish your Pocket. And because your advantage state is typically stronger than Duck Hunt's against you, you get a lot more off your openings. Duck Hunt gets edge guarded way easier than Villager does, so your openings typically should be a lot more meaningful unless you get hit with something really nasty like Clay Pigeon combos. But if you can avoid those and avoid all of his most super high damaging stuff, you can do super well against Duck Hunt. Next up we got Falco. Honestly, this one is pretty bad, and if it wasn't for Reflector, Falco would get taken advantage of because of his low mobility and, you know, fragility off stage. But because he has Reflector, he can nullify a lot of those tools just by completely making it difficult for you to make any sort of progress in the match. You can just kind of stand there and reflect, and it is really difficult to punish. You can do things like roll in on it and jump over it from above, but it gets telegraphed. He also has pretty good edge guarding against Villager because of his high jump and his long-lasting aerials. He can just kind of have a wall of hitboxes off stage that can be difficult to get around. But at the same time, Falco is basically made of paper. If you get good openings against him and you make even one read on his recovery, he's basically dead. He's super light, his recovery is pretty telegraphed, especially if he doesn't have a jump. So that's your saving grace in this matchup, is the fact that you can edge guard him really hard. You can slingshot at his side B, you can beat out his up B entirely. And Falco does have really high jumps, so he doesn't have the best approach angles at you. He mostly relies on Reflector to kind of control the tempo and make progress that way. It's not the worst matchup ever, but it is very difficult. Fox, I'm tempted to put Fox in even, to be honest. I actually don't think it's that bad at all. Fox obviously is a great character. He has insane mobility, insane damage output. But the thing is that similar to Falco, he doesn't really have forward mobility in the air. He has to get on you on the ground or from above. And Fox obviously has the easiest time getting in on people from above because he's the fastest faller. But that sort of playstyle is not the most solid against a Villager who likes to stay under platforms a lot and bait out those kind of approaches all the time with punishing options like up smash and up air. So it can be pretty difficult for Fox to really get kills on Villager. If you're playing well, you stay under platforms, you shield a lot, and it can be difficult for Fox to get a lot started. Ganon, you know, it's Ganon. I'm sorry, man. You just die sometimes. You suck. Ganon is terrible. Sorry, folks. Next up, Greninja. One of the harder ones, for sure. He's super mobile, he has great disjoints, and he has counter, which is a really good option against Lloyd. It makes Lloyd a lot more scary to use in general, but it's not the worst thing ever. If you play really grounded, really shield heavy, it can be kind of difficult for Greninja to get things started himself. So a lot of the time it ends up being a really slow-paced matchup, and if you're good in that style, you can do really well against Greninja. Next up we got Hero, and to be honest, I'm gonna make a completely new tier for Hero. Because this matchup is really just so terrible beyond anything that I can say. These tiers aren't numbered, you know, this isn't -1, -2 or anything. Hero, that's a -4, I'm gonna say it. I think this is probably the worst matchup in the entire game, I'll be honest. There's so many things that make this matchup so bad. Obviously he has a sword, that's already kind of tricky for Villager. Side B just extends on Lloyd, it basically doubles in distance, so if he side B's on your Lloyd, you guaranteed get hit. So setting up Lloyd is really hard. Bounce, obviously, do I need to say anything? Villager is probably the worst character in the game against Bounce. You have basically no tools except for forward tilt and nair, and it's like, how are you going to nair this guy when he has a big sword? And then, honestly, the worst one of them all is Zoom. Because you might notice that every other one of these matchups, you know, Cloud, Chrom, Corrin, Dark Pit, Falco, all the bad ones, they're bad, but you edgeguard them. Hero, you don't edgeguard because he has Zoom. So you have basically no win condition against Hero besides just be 10 times the player that they are. And, you know, it's been done before. I've beaten Beast Mode Paul in the past. I probably won't ever do it again. If you're a villager main and you're fighting this matchup, I'm sorry. Keep fighting the good fight, or pick up another character. I won't even blame you for that. So yeah, that's the worst matchup in the game. And we'll move on. Ice Climbers. I like this matchup a lot. There is a lot of really unique interactions that happen between Villager and Ices. A lot of them come out in Villager's favor, to be honest. Because Ices is 2 characters, they have 2 hitboxes. That means anytime they hit Lloyd, they basically explode. All of their moves just blow up Lloyd because of how much damage they do. And so that means if they side B at you and you have a Lloyd out, or if you just Lloyd out of a combo, you'll basically just explode them. Nana will end up taking a lot of damage. They'll probably get separated, and you edgeguard them really well, to be honest, because the way that Icy's up B works is that Nana goes up and Popo stays below Nana, completely vulnerable. So if you go down there with Nair, or if you just bowling ball it, you'll just completely hit Popo away and just kill them. And you have a really big window to do that. It's quite generous. One thing that makes Icy's oppressive against other characters is like Blizz walls. Just like blizzarding in place and stuff can be kind of tricky for a lot of characters, especially on ledge. Villager, on the other hand, can just completely ignore that. He can Lloyd ride straight through the blizzard. He can also dash attack through the blizzard if he's on stage and get openings that way. So it's a pretty fun matchup. I like it a lot. I think it's slightly winning. Obviously, Ices still has insane damage output, so you only need a few openings to win as Ices, but I would definitely put it in Villager favor. Ike is, I would say even. I used to think it was winning. It might still be winning, I'm not sure, to be honest. Ike relies a lot on landing aerials, specifically full hop landing aerials, and the thing with Ike is that all of his aerials are extremely slow, which means if you jump at him with Nair, you will outspeed him in the air 100% of the time. Anytime he jumps at you, if you're positioned under him, you can just Nair at him and beat him out completely. And if you full hop Nair someone, that is a big combo starter. So those are really crucial openings to get against Ike. And if you're not in position to Nair, you can just avoid it and run it back next time. Ike doesn't have any good burst options. His dash attack is extremely slow, so you can just run away from it, put out a Lloyd, make him jump again, and rinse and repeat. You can slingshot at his side Bs off stage. You can down air his up Bs. You can slingshot his up Bs as well. You can put out a Lloyd wherever he'll side B. Of course, that is still Ike. He has really good damage and he has a sword, which can be difficult to deal with. One of the main things sword characters have over Villager in general is that they can avoid all of the Lloyd mix-ups on ledge. So his ledge trapping is strong, and he's got decent edge guarding as well. He can go off stage and up B at your up B and then hit you with the landing hitbox on stage. It's a little difficult, but you have a lot of really good tools, and if the Ike doesn't know the matchup, you can kind of overwhelm them really easily. Incineroar, I'm not sure exactly where to put this one, to be honest. It really hurts me to admit that we lose to Incineroar, but I think it actually just is the case. To be fair, I haven't played it a lot, so I think it's possible that it could become better into even or winning, but right now, it just seems difficult. The one thing you do have over Incineroar, of course, is edge guarding, but using Lloyd or even Slingshot can be really dicey, to be honest, because if he reads your landing Slingshot with a Revenge, now he just does double damage and he just kills you sometimes. He can like side B through the Lloyd and stuff. Like it's tricky, and it's just really hard to keep him at bay. I haven't really figured it out yet. If I do, I'll let you guys know, because I really don't want us to lose to Incineroar. That just hurts my soul a little bit. We got Inkling. I think Inkling is a positive matchup. She is really stubby and struggles to get in on a lot of characters, and Villagers, you know, chief among them. Forward tilt is great against Inkling, and any other really stubby character forward tilt goes a long way against. She kind of sucks against Lloyd. The thing that makes her really good into other characters is that her dash is so good, but her dash being good doesn't matter when there's a Lloyd on screen. You know, she can't dash through Lloyd, so she's forced to jump, and her jumping approaches are not super good. She's got a really linear recovery. She kind of sucks in the air, and you force her to be in the air a lot of the time, so... Isabelle, you know, it's not quite a ditto, but it's basically a ditto. If I had to give any character the edge, I would probably give it to Villager, just because Isabelle is so much worse on ledge. The one thing that Isabelle I think is supposed to have over Villager is like damage output, but to be honest, I think Villager's damage output can rival that of Isabelle's if you are really good in your advantage state. You also, I think, have better edge guarding tools against Isabelle than she has on you. I think Bowling Ball is overall more useful than Fishing Rod is. It doesn't matter at the end of the day. It's a pretty close matchup. You both have Slingshot. You're both going to be spamming Pocket, so, you know. Next up, we got Joker. Joker's a tough one. He's really mobile. He can approach from so many different angles. The one thing he does struggle with is his out of shield game. You can kind of mash on him with nair if you cross him up a lot and stuff like that. And if you are really patient in your shield, it can be difficult for him to get kills. He wants to downer you, he wants to read spot dodges with fair one and stuff, so if you don't give those up, it can be kind of difficult for him to kill, but he can also just kill you off stage with Arsene back air at the same time, so the good thing is that his Arsene is easier to kill off stage than his regular recovery is sometimes, so both of them are exploitable enough, so if you know how to deal with that, you will do a lot better against Joker, but it is still a pretty difficult matchup. His damage output is obviously insane, his kill power is insane sometimes, so... And we got Jigglypuff. This is another losing one, in my opinion. Her edge guarding is just so impeccable against Villager, like one of the hardest characters to avoid off ledge for sure. If you're struggling in this matchup, I really recommend going to a stage where you can go under the stage, because that's basically going to be your only out against Puff. And even then she can chase you, but you get a lot more opportunities that way. Because she's so light and is in the air so much, Villagers really punishing anti-airs can go a long way. If you get one up smash, one up tilt, one 3 turn up air, she's toast. That's basically your main win condition, is just playing really mobile and really evasive, and not letting her just mash on you with forward air and nair. She has really good tools against slingshot, so it's going to be a lot of like nair and like retreating aerials and stuff to beat her out. Kazuya, I'm not sure, to be honest. I haven't really played a good Kazuya like in my life, so I don't know. In my head, it doesn't seem that bad. He struggles to get in, he can get edge guarded, but a lot of Villagers do struggle with Kazuya, so I'm not going to give my input on it, but I do think this has potential to be like a winning matchup for Villager. Ken, on the other hand, is way easier than Kazuya for sure. He doesn't have really good grounded approach options. He has Tatsu, which is actually pretty good. That's one thing he has over Ryu, is that he can Tatsu through the Lloyd, but you can actually crouch under it, which is really funny, and punish it that way, or basically nullify it. He is really bad off stage. Villager has good tools to do with focus as well. If he's landing with focus, you can hit him with back air, which is less laggy than forward air, and it also has no hit lag. So you can back air and then nair, and it's basically a little 1-2 punch that just beats out focus attack if you time it right. It's almost like Villager has like a fake multi-hit option against it. So I think that is really useful against Ken. He is forced to jump a lot, and he doesn't have the best tools to deal with all the projectiles being thrown at him, and he doesn't have the best projectile of his own. So yeah, definitely a good matchup there. Dedede, I don't really care about Dedede, so I'm gonna leave it at that. Pocket his Gordo and kill him off stage. It's kind of like that. K-Rool is the same deal. K-Rool is actually a little bit harder because his forward air is so good and his nair can be kind of difficult to deal with, but K-Rool likes to land on platforms a lot. If you can bait that out, you can do really well. And if you don't just bowling ball his recovery, you will just get smoked. Like, I was losing to K-Rool for so long until I realized that I just wasn't using bowling ball. Once I started doing that, it became so much easier. So just bowling ball him, it's that simple. Force him to go high and then keep hitting him off stage, rinse repeat, and it should be a lot easier. Kirby, I want to put it in losing, but I feel like it's probably not. I used to struggle with Kirby a lot, and it's been a while since I played it, but it's a very weird matchup because you have to play very grounded. Kirby is short and really difficult to hit sometimes, so you have to use a lot of Lloyd, but you have to be careful with it because his forward air is like weirdly disjointed and like really good to approach with sometimes, and it's kind of difficult to out of shield Kirby because of how small he is. He can like avoid nair sometimes, so it's weird. You have to hit him out of his jump a lot. His air speed is really bad, so if he's in the air, you are winning that situation for the most part. Link, I'm not too sure, to be honest. I've gone back and forth on this matchup between winning and losing. I think it might just be even. The one thing that Link has that is super good against Villager is nair, but at the same time, nair is mostly good when it's used to nullify Villager's stuff. When he's using it offensively, it doesn't feel like the strongest option. It gets pivot grabbed, it gets forward tilted, it gets hit with nair out of shield, but if he does it in place, it's just really difficult to make progress, but you don't actually lose anything. It ends up being a really slow-paced matchup if they play like that. Once they start mixing in forward airs, it can be kind of tricky, but you can kind of just play defensively and play with your projectiles at long range, and you end up winning a lot of the time. Pocketing bomb is obviously really useful. Pocketing boomerang is crazy reward because it actually just goes straight through nair. You can also block boomerang with Lloyd. That's an option. So yeah, not the worst matchup ever, not the hardest matchup. Little Mac, I want to believe that it's winning, but I have not played it really at all, so I'm just going to leave it at that. Same thing with Lucario, to be honest. I've kind of never played a Lucario in my life. I've played Armadillo like 2 years ago or something at this point. So yeah, honestly, I don't know. This one feels even to me, this one feels winning, but I don't really feel educated enough to give my thoughts on those. Lucas, on the other hand, I kind of go back and forth with Lucas between winning and even. I think it's winning, to be honest. The main thing that is tough to deal with is he's like in the air a lot, but his airspeed is extremely good, so it's really tough to beat him out in the air. I think it might just be best to like hit his landings, but his aerials are really good and his mashing on shield is pretty tricky to deal with. You have to really choose your out of shield options wisely against Lucas, because if you do them like too early, you'll just get hit with like down tilt into forward tilt or something, or you'll just get mashed on. Honestly, I think I might just put it in even, to be honest, because he has enough good tools, he has decent edge guarding, he has good enough hitboxes, but Villager just keeps him out really well, and PK Fire can be kind of fake against Villager sometimes. Dash attack is really good to hit his Zair recoveries, and if he doesn't Zair, you can obviously just pocket or bowling ball it or whatever when he uses PK Thunder. So yeah, pretty close matchup. We're both little quirky zoner guys, so I'll leave it there for now. Lucina, she is pretty fast, she's got great disjoints, and she has really good edge guarding. At the same time, she is very floaty. She relies a lot on jumps. If she is a little too careless with her jumps, she can just die because her recovery is very linear. And her neutral is pretty linear as well. You can take advantage of that, but Lucina definitely has a way easier time playing neutral than Villager does and gets a lot more reward. So I'll leave it in the difficult tier for now. Next up we got Luigi, and give it up for our first relevant winning matchup in this whole tier so far, except arguably Ice Climbers, but yeah, Luigi is, I would say, a winning matchup. I've played this matchup a lot at high level with players like Guy and Spickles and Jorge, and I've never really felt like it was anything but winning. You can kind of stand behind Lloyd, and Luigi just really struggles to deal with that because his airspeed is so bad that jumping over Lloyd is like a non-option. He can bait you trying to swing at his jump, but if you don't bite, it's really difficult for him to get stuff started. Anything he does can be reacted to, like roll in or like short hop forward air. Those things can be super exploited, and he also dies off stage really easily. You can put out a projectile at his side B, and the side B will just clank into the projectile and he'll just fall. He doesn't even 0 to death Villager, like almost at all. I've basically never gotten 0 to death as Villager against Luigi. Something about his weight or hurt box is just impossible for Luigi to 0 to death. That is obviously really great because it means you don't die to grab. You mostly just have to worry about down throw up B, which is obviously scary, but besides that, it is pretty easy for Villager, I would say. Mario, on the other hand, he's supposed to be stubby, he's supposed to get edge guarded, it's supposed to be kind of a struggle for him, but he just does so much damage and he's so fast and he just mashes so well that it's just so hard to get him off you sometimes. If he gets momentum, it's just really difficult to stop. He obviously has incredible combo game, incredible damage output, and his recovery is not as exploitable as you would think. It's possible, but it's tricky. But yeah, this is a hard matchup. I don't like it very much, to be honest. Marth, it's Lucina, but a tipper. Probably also losing. Who cares? Mega Man, I want to put this one in even, to be honest. I don't feel like I can, though. Mega Man is obviously a super versatile character. He can play the game in so many different ways. He can be really, really aggressive with forward air, things like Metal Blade and Crash Bomb on Lloyd. He has a lot of options to punish Lloyd. His advantage state is so good, his damage output is so good. At the same time, Villager doesn't have the worst of it. If they play a really pellet-heavy defensive style, then dash attack can be really good to make openings. If they're playing more aggressive, you have to rely on stuffing out the aggression before it can start. But Mega Man's disadvantage, while it is really good, Villager can take advantage of it pretty well if you bait out up Bs. Leaf Shield is a little less spammable against Villager because you can shield it, and then when Mega Man throws it away, if he throws it back at you, you can just pocket it and hit it back at him. If he doesn't throw it at you, you can just start running at him and hit him for that. The main thing if you're fighting Mega Man is to play really conservative with your Lloyds, because if you aren't, then he will just overwhelm you with Metal Blades and pellets and forward airs. So if you can be conservative with your Lloyd usage and pick your openings carefully and make every hit count and really abuse his disadvantage, it can be really doable. Next up we got Meta Knight. To be honest, I'm tempted to put him in this lower tier. I think I will. Because Villager's so floaty, I think he dies way more easily to Meta Knight's combos than other characters do. It's just so difficult to keep him out consistently because he has disjoints if he wants them. He has moves like Nair that can beat out Slingshot if he's just staying in the air too much. His edge guarding is so annoying to deal with. You basically have to go under the stage if you want to avoid his edge guards, but even that can still be taken advantage of. It's a really difficult matchup. I've played it a good amount, and I always found this one quite a struggle. You have to play really defensively. You do have the tools to keep them out. If your neutral is better and you don't let them hit you, it can feel really difficult for Meta Knight. But if you guys are on even footing in neutral, then it just feels so bad because his openings matter so much more than yours. He always has that clutch factor of just laddering you, and your lead can be wiped away in an instant. So I consider that one of Villager's harder matchups. Mewtwo, it's kind of hard. You know, Reflector is somehow even better than it was in Smash 4, where it was already difficult to punish. Now it's even bigger, even harder to punish. But Mewtwo's disadvantage is definitely worse. He gets 2-framed really easily, he's super light. Because he's tall, he gets hit with Slingshot on the ground, like Rising Slingshot. But he is really fast, and he gets a lot off of dash attack and stuff like that. It is kind of tricky to keep him out sometimes if they're playing really aggressively. The one thing that is good is that you kind of shut down the Shadow Ball game plan, which is one of Mewtwo's greatest strengths. But, you know, Mewtwo still kind of outspeeds you, outdamages you, can even edge guard you with back air and things like that, so it's tricky. Me Brawler, I think, is about even. He's kind of like Mario, except a lot easier to deal with. He's a lot more telegraphed. His combo game is pretty weak to SDI, and his kills are a lot more avoidable than Mario's. Mario can kill from a lot of different places. Me Brawler kind of requires an up tilt under a platform to kill you really early. His combo game is generally a lot more telegraphed and easier to avoid. Also, because he falls so much faster, his edge guarding is significantly worse than Mario's is. He's even stubbier than Mario, he's got no cape or anything, but he is way faster. That's the one thing that he has over Mario, is that he can just get in on you a lot more quickly. So he can really mess you up if you're playing a little too passively, but I think if you play the matchup properly, you can make it pretty difficult for him to get in on you, and you can exploit his recovery really well, a lot more than you can Mario for sure. Me Gunner, I'm not sure to be honest. Probably depends on the set. I'd probably just put it in winning. I'll leave it in the I don't know tier. Most of his specials lose to pocket. I can't imagine it's that hard. None of Me Gunner's specials give her a really solid disadvantage either, so I'll leave it there. Same thing with Me Swordfighter. I don't know, to be honest. I will say it's not terrible. This one I'm feeling winning. This one I'm feeling like it might be even. Especially the more common Me Swordfighter set relies a lot on side B. So if you're in the corner, side B is obviously non-usable because you'll side B off stage if you do that. Chakram is kind of difficult to deal with, but also you can take advantage of it if you are conservative with your Lloyd usage. Don't be scared of Me Swordfighter, guys. It's not all that. Min Min is a lot easier than people might think. I'm actually considering putting that one in even, actually. Min Min is a really underexplored matchup for Villager, because the thing with Min Min is that you have to wait until Ram Ram happens, and then you can kind of set up your neutral. If you shield Ram Ram, you can do a quick short hop Lloyd at a shield, like instantly, and you'll block the next arm, because all of her arms, except Ram Ram, just lose to Lloyd. Like, they straight up just stop and go back to her. If you hit a weak slingshot on her, in between her arms, like if you jump over an arm and hit her with slingshot, you immediately have tempo advantage because she is not fast enough to set up another arm before you can hit her with another slingshot. So that means you're kind of winning the long range game, and she has to be at higher percents for that to be a factor, like around 40 to 50. She also is probably the easiest character to edgeguard, like, in the game. You can actually just reliably flowchart her and kill her about 100% of the time. If you watch my VODs against Min Min, you can see I literally take like 7 out of 9 stocks with edge guarding. It really is that doable. It's not the easiest matchup ever, of course. It requires a lot of matchup knowledge and experience, because if you have no experience, you will just get ram-rammed and you will just get blown up. Her openings matter so much. She does so much damage, but if you play really defensively with Lloyds, you can avoid getting killed a lot of the time. You can avoid a lot of her edge guards. You can avoid her 2 frames by stalling with balloons. So you have a lot of benefits in this matchup, and I'm going to put it there for now. Game & Watch is much the same story. This is another matchup that Villager mains hate, but is actually not that bad, and here's why. The Game & Watch's neutral is extremely linear. He relies entirely on nair, basically, and dash attack. If you can snipe out his jumps as he nairs, it is really difficult for him to get anything started, because nair does not have a hitbox on the side until the very end of the move, so it is very easily dash attackable, it's easily slingshotable. Game & Watch has Bucket, which is a decent reflector. It's easily baited out if you're just using it as a reflector, but you can bucket the explosion at the end of the Lloyd's lifespan, and that can be really dangerous because if he gets 2 of those, you can just straight up die at like 0 or 10%. But the thing is that it has to be at the end of Lloyd's lifespan, which means it has to go all the way across the stage. So if you have center stage, you can use Lloyd really reliably to keep him in the corner. Because he's so linear, he has a really hard time getting around that, and you can keep him in the corner pretty easily. You can ledge trap him pretty easily with Lloyd. If he nairs into a Lloyd, it'll do enough hit lag to where it'll just trade and he'll get hit. The one thing that is good for Game & Watch is that his edge guarding is really good and his juggling is really good. But if you go to ledge, it's actually a lot harder for Game & Watch to ledge trap Villager than any other character, because Villager's balloons just completely block the bacon from his neutral B. That is a really good way to get off ledge and limit his advantage state. There's a lot of really minute interactions that are in Villager's favor that are too much for me to go into, but I have a ton of experience in this matchup. I've played all the best Game & Watches in my state. I've played Monty, I've played Meister, and I've done really well against them. I'm really confident in this placing. I think it's just a matchup that tests a lot of skills that other matchups don't really test a Villager, so it's difficult to learn, but once you learn it, it is really not that bad. Ness, I'll say, is even. His hitboxes can be kind of difficult to deal with. He can kind of mash on you sometimes. Obviously, Pocket on PK Thunder is kind of big, but a bigger deal is being able to punish his air dodge with things like down air, because down air lasts so long. His smash attacks on ledge don't matter as much because you can stall them out with balloons, but the one thing that he does have that is kind of annoying is PK Fire on the balloons. It can be really difficult to get off ledge against. So yeah, PK Fire on ledge can make this a really volatile matchup because he kind of destroys you on ledge, but you destroy him off stage, so both of your openings matter a ton. And it just ends up being kind of volatile because of that, but overall I think it's still even. Next up we got Pacman. I'm tempted to put in between even and winning. I'll just leave it in this tier for now. He has some of the best brawling options out of any zoner, but they can be taken advantage of. They're easily whiff punished with forward air and back air, and you can even crouch under them and hit them with nair and up tilt and stuff like that. So that can be good if you're struggling to punish forward air. His camping game is pretty good, but Villager kind of deals with it a lot more naturally than other characters just based on Pocket and just the sheer range that you can pressure him from. You can eliminate the hydrant mix-up landing option completely with Pocket, make things a little troublesome for him once he's in the air, take advantage of his floatiness, and you can of course edgeguard him really well with bowling ball and stuff like that. So I would put it in winning for now, I guess. Palu is definitely one of the hardest ones. Here, I'll put Cloud in here as well, actually. Palu is just really oppressive on ledge. Her ledge trapping in general is really good. She's so mobile and she can mix you up in so many different ways. The one thing about Palu is that her neutral revolves a lot around jumping, so a Palu that doesn't know the matchup will jump carelessly and honestly can get kind of owned by Villager, but even one that does know the matchup still has to jump eventually, and that is your main focus in this matchup, is playing really grounded and taking advantage of her jumping. She obviously has really great tools around Lloyd because of her reflector. Palu's recovery is also a little tricky to deal with, but can be exploited. She has to do an up B that avoids having a 2-frame, because obviously she'll get bowling balled if she does that. But the one that avoids the 2-frame is vulnerable to slingshot because she has to go exactly from the side. So you really have to do everything in your power to not get blown up because her advantage state is just so strong. Next up we got Peach, and Peach is honestly I find really difficult. She's known to struggle with zoners, but I feel like Villager isn't really one of them. She just does so much damage and she's so evasive. She can mix up her vertical spacing so well that it's tough to snipe her out of the air sometimes. Her edge guarding is good. She can stay out there with float. Because of how evasive she is, it ends up being kind of a slow-paced game most of the time where she's just kind of floating at different heights and finding her opening, but her openings do matter a lot. So I just put it in even for now. Next up we got Pichu, and I feel like this one is winning. Villager actually had a lot of wins over Pichu pre-patch, results-wise, when Pichu was really broken. I think Villager tends to do well because he's so explosive with bowling ball and up smash. Pichu being so stubby means he kind of just loses to nair as a get-off-me tool and as just an anti-approach option. It can be kind of difficult to get in on you if you're playing a very grounded, forward tilt heavy, nair heavy game plan. He has decent edge guarding and he is really mobile so he can get down on you, but I think overall the odds are not in his favor in that regard. On the other hand, Pikachu, the odds are definitely in his favor because he is a lot more difficult to get around. He does a lot more damage. His edge guarding is a lot more consistent. His kill power is more consistent. He has dash attack is a way better tool than Pichu's is. But it is kind of similar to Pichu. You want to trade a lot with Nair when he jumps at you and stuff like that. You want to Nair at his T-Jolts, but I think Pikachu also has the extra win con of camping Villager out, which Pichu does not have because he'll take damage if he, just spams T-Jolt all day. Pikachu, I think, does super well against Villager. Olimar, I'm tempted to put in an even, but I feel like it's probably losing. Forward smash is honestly really difficult to deal with, especially with yellow Pikmin. It's just out so long, and if you extend it on Lloyd, it's even harder to deal with. He is light, so if you get one read with up smash or up air, he can just die. And also Pocket is good. You can only pocket the side B Pikmin and chuck it back at him. When Villager gets Pikmin stuck on his head, he has very few moves to hit those off. That can be pretty easily taken advantage of by Olimar. You have to dash attack or up tilt, which are both very committal. I think olimar does really well. Plant does not do well. Plant kind of sucks, to be honest. His game plan just kind of loses to pocket. He just loses to bowling ball as well. Plant has enough speed and enough burst options like dash attack and forward air to do okay. You know, it's winnable. It has been won. You know, Brood has been kept in Japan a couple times, but it is really tricky. His airspeed is just so bad, so he has to rely on dash attack, but if you're careful around that, it can be really tough for him. Pit is of course the same as Dark Pit. Pokemon Trainer, I think, is around even. None of the Pokemon do exceptionally against Villager. I think honestly the hardest one is Charizard, because he's just so fast and so scary, but the other ones aren't really as threatening. Ivysaur is fairly slow and can't rely on Razor Leaf as much as she can in other matchups because of Pocket, obviously. A pocketed Razor Leaf will just go straight through Ivysaur and do a lot of damage and set up into combos, so it can be risky to use. Squirtle is just really stubby, can kind of struggle against Nair at a shield and forward tilt and things like that, but does alright. It can be a little difficult to... It can be tough to keep him out sometimes just because his air acceleration is so good and he can mix around his airspeed really well. PT's disadvantage is generally not that good. He has to rely on switching. All the Pokemon get bowling balled, so if you know your edge guards well and you play around each Pokemon's win con, it isn't that difficult. But they are still a good character. They can outdamage Villager very easily, so that's that. Aegis is really hard. Mithra's burst is just so crazy. Foresight is just such a crazy option. I honestly don't even know how you're supposed to hit Mithra at all when she is so fast and can hit all of your jumps and can just nair at you and beat out your slingshot that way. Like, it's just really, really difficult. If you are struggling in this matchup, I would recommend just dedicating your time to figuring out a perfect edgeguard flowchart and just sending her off stage as much as possible, because that's basically the only way I found to beat her. If you're not doing that, you have to rely... I mean, even if you are doing that, you have to rely a lot on, like, whiff punishing her, which is just such a nightmare. And if she overshoots, it's just so... the reward is just so much in her favor. All of her stuff is pretty safe on parry and stuff. Pyra kind of sucks. You shouldn't really be Pyra, but, you know, whatever. Belmont. I have done really well against Belmont before. I honestly don't think it is that bad, though. Some people think it's losing. I think it's close to even. He can't really use his specials all that much, and Pocket is really good to just nullify a lot of his ledge traps and stuff like that. You can make Axe extremely dangerous for him to throw out. But the thing that is really difficult to deal with as Villager is just like short hop, rising, down angled forward air, and back air, because he has both rising and landing aerials, so pretty difficult to take advantage of him in neutral because of that. He has so many ways to mix it up, but at the end of the day, he is still fragile. It's basically another kind of volatile matchup similar to Ness, where whoever is better at calling out the other player for bad habits is just going to completely eat them alive, with either ledge traps in Richter's case or edge guards in Villager's case. Ridley, I'm not sure about this one either, to be honest. I feel like it's somewhere in this realm, either even or winning. I am tempted to say winning. Ridley is kind of linear. His recovery is really, really exploitable. He only has like 3 or 4 angles, and they're all pretty easily taken advantage of. He does have great edge guarding, though, I will say, and his hitboxes are generally really big, so they're good at punishing Lloyd. If you do like a run-up down tilt or a run-up forward air, or even dash attack can be good against Lloyd, and just kind of makes it scary to jump because he can just be running at you so much. I'm actually going to put it in even, but it's not, you know, crazy difficult or anything. I think this has potential to go winning if you perfect your edge guards. For now, I'll leave it there. Rob, I really wish this was a winning matchup. It's just not, unfortunately. He does so much damage and his advantage state is just so powerful that it is just so difficult to play the game that you need to play to beat Rob consistently enough to actually win matches. You can win a bunch of interactions in a row, but Rob is so heavy and kills you off such few interactions that it's just really, really difficult to actually seal games against him. He's really hard to kill. You don't even have the strongest punishes on parrying his nair unless you have Axe. Axe is pretty big in this matchup. He really just beats on you if he hits you a single time. You know, getting Rob forward aired is just such a terrible situation because he can just frame trap you, hit you with another forward air, send you off stage, and then side B you and whatever, and it's just really difficult. You obviously have great tools like Pocket and Slingshot on his landings and stuff like that, but it really is just not in your favor generally. Robin is a pretty easy one. It can be kind of explosive because Robin does so much damage off every hit, but it is really, really difficult for Robin to actually earn a hit on you because you are actually faster than Robin, which is really rare. so you can kind of run circles around him with your mobility and with projectiles. He is really bad on ledge. All of his ledge mix-ups revolve around arc fire, but you just pocket that. Pocket basically everything. You don't have to interact with his sword at all. You can just run away from it, and with punish, wait till his sword dies, then make the most of your openings. Really not that bad. Rosa, I want to say this is even. To be honest, I've played a single Rosalina player in the world, and that's Dabuz, so you can imagine how that went. I did okay, I took some games, but I really have no idea what I was doing. I just kind of tried to exploit her floatiness. Down B didn't seem like a crazy big deal. I honestly don't feel like this matchup should be that bad. It feels close to even to me, but I'll leave it there for now because I don't really have much more to say about it. Roy, kind of a hard matchup, but one of the better ones in this tier for sure, and one of the better top tier matchups that Villager has in general. Dash attack goes a really long way in this matchup in terms of edge guarding him. His recovery is just the perfect angle to hit with dash attack. I got a bunch of kills off it in all my sets that I've played against top level Roys. I've played Cola, Mugen, and Goblin. I've done well against all of them. It is still tricky, you know, because Roy can be so fast and can approach from different angles with things like up air and nair, but playing very mobile against him can make it difficult for him. Playing very whiff punish heavy, very forward tilt heavy, hitting him out of shield at the right spots, it can be kind of difficult for him to get stuff started. Hanging on ledge is good against him. Like I said, that's an option available to you. You can play it slow on ledge because he doesn't really have anything too punishing in that regard. So if you avoid jab and avoid his other general like super strong kill moves, then you should do alright. Ryu is kind of the same as Ken, except he has way better hitboxes and a way better projectile. The Shakunetsu Fireball goes straight through Lloyd, so that's an actual option that he can use to punish Lloyd, which Ken just straight up does not have. On the other hand though, it is risky. If I pocket that, you basically have guaranteed shield breaks and you have guaranteed like 50% combos, so it can get pretty nasty if you are careless with Fireball, but it's much the same as Ken. You know, he has a linear neutral, linear recovery, and you can take advantage of that overall. Samus, I think, is also winning. This is probably the most relevant winning matchup in the game for Villager, I would say. Lloyd goes so far in completely nullifying the charge shot game plan that makes her so oppressive. A lot of her neutral options that don't revolve around charge shot are really, honestly, kind of laggy, and you can take advantage of them really easily with basic whiff punishing. She also kind of struggles to get off ledge. Like if you just kind of wait at roll distance and avoid her like forward air, she has to get off ledge against Lloyd and slingshot, and that's just really not in her favor. You can snipe her out of her charge shot with slingshot. You can just block charge shot at all times with Lloyd, which also helps getting off ledge a lot. She can call it out with dash grab and stuff, which is something to note if you're fighting Samus. You have to play that like very layered minigame, but ultimately I think it is in your favor. She really struggles on ledge. She struggles to get to the ledge against bowling ball and things like that. So yeah, not the easiest matchup for her. Sephiroth, I will put in even. You can outrange his really big sword with slingshot, and that is something that Sephiroth doesn't really have to deal with normally. A character that has neutral tools that outrange him. He also has really bad out of shield. He can be ledge trapped, surprisingly, which usually he doesn't get ledge trapped by other characters because obviously his sword is so big, but because you outrange it, you can just stand outside of the range of it, kind of like what I said with Samus, and just pelt at him with slingshot. Kind of focus more on corner pressuring him than ledge trapping him. You have a lot of funny stuff against Sephiroth, like the fact that because he's so tall, up smash is just safe on his shield, so that can be good. You can just kind of spam that a little bit. He doesn't have the best grounded options, but he does have, you know, his aerials are still really good. If he just like kind of back airs at you, it can be kind of tough to deal with sometimes. His ledge trapping also is really good. Counter on Lloyd can also be a pretty volatile option for him, but you can also pocket the counter actually and kill him even earlier than he can kill you. Counter Lloyd will kill you at like 70 or 60. Pocketed counter will actually just kill at like 20, so that's something to consider. Pretty even matchup overall, I'd say. Sheik is really hard matchup. This matchup just gets worse the higher level you play it at, I feel. Sometimes I'm just not scared of Sheik at all. If they aren't really proficient with their kill confirms, it can kind of feel really non-threatening, but once you get to the point where they can kill you in so many different ways, suddenly her biggest weakness becomes a non-weakness at all, and then you have to deal with a really mobile character who can avoid everything, who can edgeguard you really well, who can low profile under everything, just be a really insane nuisance to deal with. The traditional wisdom is just to nair at her and, you know, win a lot off trades, but if the Sheik player doesn't let that happen, it can actually be extremely difficult to deal with. Shulk is really, really hard. I'm tempted to put it in this bad tier, to be honest, but I think I won't. Just because his aerials being slow gives you kind of an out to get in on him with. kind of similar to what I said with Ike, except Shulk doesn't really full hop as much, but you can take advantage of the slowness of his aerials by sniping out his jumps from far away, playing really defensively, and just not letting him get what he wants with his Monado arts. He is pretty slow unless he's in the speed mode, obviously, so you can kind of just camp out a lot of the Monado arts that are scary to you. Playing really shield heavy and understanding the tempo that the Shulk player is playing at is really key to playing this matchup well, because if not, you will just kind of get overwhelmed. Snake is a really fun matchup. I really wish I knew a lot more about the Snake matchup than I do, but I know enough to say that I think it's about even. There's still a long way to go in this matchup. I feel like you can innovate a lot. Pocket is mostly useful as a defensive tool. Snake can kind of take advantage of you if you have stuff in pocket for too long, so just pocketing something and then using it almost as soon as possible is good. You want to have pocket open a lot of the time. Same thing in other matchups like Duck Hunt, where you have so many projectiles on the screen at once. Snake has to rely on kind of like dash attack to get in on you because his ground speed is kind of middling otherwise. But dash attack is just one option, which means it's pretty easily baited. If you are very cognizant of it, you can take advantage of Snake doing bad dash attacks. You can juggle him really well. You don't have to deal with a lot of his mix-ups because you can kind of go at him horizontally, and it doesn't matter if he B reverses or not because you're hitting him with a slingshot anyway. You can take advantage of him like that, and overall I think it's just a really fun matchup, and I'm looking forward to exploring it more and sharing more insight on it in the future. Sonic is difficult. I don't think I really have to explain why. Some of the best edge guarding in the game. Spin dash is just really hard to deal with as a villager. You don't really have the same level of burst that other characters have where you can like clank with spin dash and stuff like that. But you do have a pretty solid camp game, so you can go band for band with him in that sense, but Sonic's damage output is just so much higher than yours, and he also just randomly cheats sometimes with like the spin dash forward air that just kills you really early, or like B reverse homing attack into back air mix up. So he has a lot of ways to just kill you really early where you don't really get those same openings against Sonic that often, because he can just up B as a get out of jail free card a lot of the time. Sora is really hard, and I don't get it, and I'm sorry, because I just don't get it, man. I've lost to Sora so hard before, and you know, I've done okay against Sora. I've played Unleashed, I've beaten him in tournament, but he also has just wiped the floor with me in friendlies, and I really just have no idea what I'm doing, honestly. I have a long way to go in the matchup, but it's really just a matter of not letting him nair you at all. You have to respect nair more than you respect anything else in the game. You just don't stand anywhere near his nair range, because if he nairs your shield, it's just not a good mix-up to play. You just need to get the hell out of there. His sword is, I think, transcendent, which means he can't actually beat out Slingshot with his sword, so that's good if he's spamming nair. You can whiff punish it a lot more easily. You can also take advantage of the fact that when he recovers, his first side B has to go horizontally, so that can make it a little bit predictable. So taking advantage of that is really going to be the key to winning this matchup consistently. Steve, I will put it in even. It's not actually even, it's like slight losing, but for Steve standards, I would say it's even because Steve kind of beats everyone. Villager, in a perfect world, should never be getting hit by Steve. If you play neutral flawlessly, Steve does not have the mobility or the burst options to ever hit you. He's very floaty, you can hit him out in the air a lot. He doesn't really have any solid, reliable ways to get in. He has to force his way in. That is not super reliable. Because it's Steve, he has the damage output to where it makes it actually not the worst thing ever, because he doesn't need to do it that many times. He has great damage output, really good ledge trapping, so his openings are some of the most hurtful in the game. For that reason, I think it is slightly losing, but I think in an ideal world, if you know all the tricks, if you know the ins and outs of the matchup, you will have the matchup experience advantage against a Steve player. So I'm going to put it in even for some clickbait reasons. You'll have to forgive me for that one. Terry, it feels losing, to be honest. I haven't played a good Terry in a while, but it's always felt really hard. His hitboxes are just so tough to deal with. His burst options like crack shoot is difficult to deal with. He has so many recovery options, like all of his specials can be used to recover in different ways, and it can be kind of difficult with all that mix up. But I'm sure with enough practice in the matchup and development, it can be even or maybe even winning. I'm not sure, but I'll leave it here for now just because that's where I'm at with it. Toon Link, I've never really struggled with. I don't really get what makes Toon Link so threatening, to be honest. I don't really feel it. I mean, he has a grab, which can go through Lloyd, and that's a pretty good option for him, but besides that, I feel like you should almost never really be getting hit by Toon Link in any meaningful way. Like, he should never do that much damage against you. He doesn't have particularly good ledge trapping or anything, and all of this stuff kind of gets nullified by Lloyd, it feels like. So leave it there. Wario, put an even. This one is one of those where it's like in an ideal world, it's winning, but Wario obviously has the insane clutch factor of Waft, and he also has great edge guarding, which is another thing, so he can just kind of win games out of nowhere sometimes with those tools. But Villager has much the same thing with Pocket and Bowling Ball. If you pocket bike, he has extremely limited recovery options. You shouldn't really ever be pocketing bike, to be honest, like they should never be giving that to you. But because of that, if they ever have to bike, they have to stay on it, and then that can be exploited in another way. Wario has really good airspeed, so he's really good at baiting out Villager to do stupid things like trying to hit him out of the air in careless ways, but with enough experience and if you know what things the Wario player is looking for, you can play a really good keep away game. You can stay in shield a lot, a lot of nair and forward tilt type of stuff, and retreating aerials to punish him as he jumps at you. But Wario can just run away with the game sometimes if he gets a lot of momentum just because of how powerful his advantage state is. Wii Fit is winning matchup. It's not as bad as some people might say. I've heard this matchup be called like Wii Fit's worst matchup. I don't think that's true. I don't really know what her other matchups are like, but I know that she has a great burst, especially with deep breathing. She can do a lot against Villager just by sheer speed and power alone. Also, her crouch is extremely good to get under slingshot. That can make it really difficult to make progress against her if she plays slowly. But you do kind of invalidate a lot of her stuff with Pocket and with Lloyd. You eliminate Sun Salutation, you eliminate her header, her soccer ball. She doesn't get her soccer ball back at all if you pocket it, and you can actually use it against her and re-pocket it because you can like hit her shield or hit her and then re-pocket the ball, and you can basically just use that as an offensive tool against her and it will kill pretty early, like around 90 or 100. Pretty good matchup. She gets edge guarded and stuff. She has decent tools if she doesn't let her stuff get pocketed though. Wolf is the worst thing ever. I hate Wolf. I think this is the hardest Spacey to deal with by far. Not by far, I guess Falco is up there too, but Wolf just feels so much more oppressive just because his hitboxes are so much better, his airspeed is so much better, his recovery is harder to edgeguard than the other two, weirdly enough. If you get side B spiked, it's just the worst feeling ever. Even if you don't get spiked, you lose your advantage, you take a bunch of damage. His up B is harder to trade with. It's just so much harder to edgeguard him, and so much harder to keep him off you, and so much harder to hit him out of the air because his nair is so disjointed. So I really struggle with this one. You have to play really grounded, just kind of move under him a lot of the time and not really mess with him in the air. You kind of have to hit his landings. But yeah, definitely a hard matchup. Yoshi, I think, is even-ish. This is another one where you have to just be running around a lot and not letting Yoshi kind of like go near you because he does so much damage with every hit, especially at low percent. He'll get some crazy combos. But he is extremely reliant on being in the air, and that kind of style is generally not favored against Villager because he has so many good anti-airs. You can also edgeguard him pretty well. You can kind of back air at his egg and just deactivate the egg and then hit him, or you can just nair at the egg straight up. Force him to go high and juggle him, things like that. Even footstool can be good against him if the Yoshi player is a little careless. It can be a little difficult. I used to think this match was winning. I used to do super well against every Yoshi. Something just changed randomly and I started losing to Yoshi a little bit more, but I still think it's close to an even matchup. Young Link, I think, is winning. It's kind of like Toon Link, except I kind of know what to be scared of against Young Link. It's just kind of easy to play around, and his disadvantage is so much worse. He's kind of made of paper sometimes. His recovery is really bad. Pocketing his boomerang is really good. Pocketing fire arrow is also really good. You have more ways to use Young Link's projectiles against him than you do against the other Links, I would say. And he's even stubbier than all of them. He doesn't really have a sword in the way that like Link does, so he just loses to forward tilt. Like straight up everything gets outranged by forward tilt. So if you just stand behind Lloyd and let Lloyd tank all the projectiles, the matchup becomes a lot easier. Zelda, I think, is even. It's really boring, to be honest. It's kind of a camp fest. You have to just wait and for your openings to punish neutral B. Pocketing Phantom can be good. I don't know, it's kind of boring, it's slow paced, it's basically what you'd expect. And lastly, we have ZSS. ZSS is a pretty difficult matchup. She's so hard to hit sometimes, has a lot of ways to get openings. The traditional ZSS of just like using a lot of nair kind of sucks against Villager because you can snipe her jumps really well, but once she starts mixing in forward air, it becomes so much harder because that just goes through everything. It goes through Lloyd and slingshot, hits your jumps. There's so many things about this matchup that are really difficult, but if you try to match her evasion and not really commit too hard, you can find your openings well, converting a lot off of your faraway slingshots and then making your openings from there. You actually can abuse her disadvantage, I think, better than other characters can. I've played this matchup some amount at high level. I've played Sharp and Mars, and I've done okay against them. It definitely still feels really hard, but doable, I think. And that's all of them. That's every single matchup in the game. Hopefully you guys found it useful, not only as just an overview of my opinions, but also as a little mini guide for fighting every character in some capacity. Like and subscribe and all that stuff if you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.